Hello everybody and welcome back to another review. This time I'd like to talk about the Hiby R6 digital audio player. Now this is the fourth audio player that I've reviewed on my channel. Quite easily, straight off the bat, I'll tell you, I find this to be the most enjoyable to navigate because this is quite a powerful piece of kit. It's got 3 gigabytes of RAM and a Snapdragon processor. So just going through all the options that you have in there, like going through all the settings and everything, has been so effortless to me, which has been a primary concern I've had with the other audio players that I've reviewed in the past. So let's just get into it really quickly. If I start this up right now, you'll see first of all it's Android based. So this is Android 6.0.1, and I'm not sure if they're planning to update to another version in the future. I have no idea, but it navigates very much like a phone. So just for clarification, I'd like to say that this is the stainless steel version of the Hiby R6. There's also going to be an aluminum or aluminum for my American friends version, which is a bit cheaper. I'm not sure exactly how much. I know that these were sold on Indiegogo a few months ago, and they reached several times their goal. And I believe it's going to be, according to their timeline, this will be in stores by May. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I haven't spoken to the Hiby representative in a while. I've just been playing around with the device, which I quite like, and I'd like to talk about it with you now. So like I said, it's Android 6.0.1 based, so scrolling, going through it, really effortless. Now, Hiby puts in their own audio player software as default. As you can see, this is the layout, this is the color scheme on by default. I haven't made any changes, there's nothing unusual going on. This is basically how it is. I have one SD card, because this does take only one SD card. Now, I'm not going to talk about sound quality just yet, I'll get to that, I promise. But just the interface, I believe, is very nice. But the cool thing about having an Android based digital audio player is you don't have to use Hiby's player if you don't want to. And that is why, I mean, I'm not saying anything against Hiby's player, I do quite like it, but just for an alternative, I downloaded USB audio player, and I've been messing around with that as well, and they both work just great, they work just fine. Now, on top of that, since also it's an Android based player and I've been using Wi-Fi on this, you can also use Tidal, which I used to have a subscription to and I was using on this device, and it worked really well. I can't quite show you right now, but it did, just trust me on that. And Spotify, which I do still have and works also very well. And yeah, so you do have these options. Of course, you can browse the internet, you can go on YouTube. Now I believe the YouTube streaming of this is capped at 720p at 60 frames per second, but it looks quite smooth, and I do like the colors on this. It looks quite a bit better than my old smartphone. Doesn't touch my new one, but you know, Samsung has their own design. This has a very pleasing interface when it comes to browsing YouTube, when it comes to watching videos, and it comes to listening to videos, because of course the DAC chip and everything. So I guess I can talk about the sound now. Now, the first thing I have to say, that this is a slight nightmare for any reviewer to say. This has 10 ohms of output impedance. So you have to keep that in mind straight off the bat, because this is one of the few times I can say your mileage may vary depending on what item you have to run with this. I will just say straight off the bat that when I was told of this, because HeadFi, basically someone posted that on the HeadFi thread, I believe the guy himself posted it, and people discussed it, and it was a deal breaker for some, not so much for others. And I was already listening to it at that point, and I had no idea that this was an issue or this was even a thing, because it was working just great for me and everything that I ran with it. But just to be thorough, I bought a few extra things to run with this, just to try and see what happens with 10 ohms of output impedance. Now, the first thing which I tried with this when I first got it was back when I had the Focal Clear. Now, the Focal Clear is a 50 to 55 ohm very sensitive headphone. I found it very easy to plug into this and just be really listenable, very like fully amped, really well listenable with the DAC chip inside this. I had a very good time listening to that as a sort of, I wouldn't say portable because it's an open headphone, but just lying in bed listening to that with this, just great. And of course my Utopia, which works almost as well. I'm too used to be using it with my desk setup, but I can't say as a portable device, this runs that quite well. And I did find that my earbuds, my other IEMs, which I do believe are dynamic driver IEMs, ran just fine with this, were very nicely presented. But somebody then told me, because you have to understand, portable audio is not my forte still. It's something I'm trying to get into a bit more to understand this side of hi-fi a bit more. But somebody did tell me that they told me that you need to get yourself an IEM, which is balanced armature, because those have a bit more, because first of all, they're very sensitive, and so they will have more swing when you're using it with a device that has 10 ohms of output impedance. So I went ahead and got myself a Noble Sage, which is a dual BA IEM. Probably not the most, I'm not sure what the exact ohm is of it, the sensitivity rather. I'm not sure exactly all of that. What I can say is that it sounds very nice out of this, and that has been my primary way of using it. Now I have been told, now I do believe Kurawong said in his review, he has the Andromeda's IEMs with him. He said it gets quite a bit brighter when you're using that IEM, just for clarification, the Andromedas with the Hiby R6. So that can be a problem because it does change the sound characteristic of the IEMs significantly in that case. I believe those are 16 ohms, so very, very sensitive. But I can just say that my dynamic driver IEMs and my one balanced armature IEM, which is of course not that sensitive and maybe just dual driver, fine, but this sounds very nice. Now I want to get to why I think the sounds is very nice. This is a Sabre chip digital audio player. Not like all the others that I've tried, but definitely like the Onam one has, which I'll get to in a minute. But I want to say that the Sabre implementation in this has been my favorite that I've heard to this date. Besides the Orpheus, but I'm not going to count that. I'm just counting stuff within normal hi-fi people range. But I do believe the tuning is done quite well. It's not peaky to my ears, which I find very annoying when I'm listening to Sabre chips usually. Now there's a stereotype, of course, and I was face to face with that stereotype when I tackled the Zorlu Zuperdak back in the day, which was very bright, very textured, but very bright, and I couldn't listen to it for very long. This I can listen to for hours and hours until it runs out of battery, which I believe it takes about 8 hours to do by my calculations. So very listenable to me. Now the reason that is because it's not a warm sound. Like I wouldn't like it too much if it was warm, because I think things should be a little bit more down the middle. This is quite a bit down the middle. It's got a more engaging sound than the Ibasso DX80 that I reviewed back in the day, which I at the time thought was very well done. But now that I've heard the Onam 1S and I've heard this, I realize that was quite a flat sounding digital audio player. Some might think that's a good thing, but I thought it was lacked a bit of excitement to me. This is quite an exciting listen, but it's also not peaky. Now that treble peak that bothers me with Sabre DAX is not present here so much, and but also at the same time I believe the bass response in this is just a little bit muted compared to the Onam 1S, which is my other reference that I have right now. So, but I do love the mid-range on this. The mid-range on this Hiby DAP, is very lush, and the soundstage is very wide, which I enjoy quite a bit because I'm usually listening to the Yggdrasil by Shit Audio, and the Yggdrasil has quite a narrow soundstage. So when I plugged my Utopia into this for testing, after being so used to using that, I was like, damn, it did open up quite a bit more in width. Now the mid-range of this, once again, like I said, it's a little bit lush. It's a little bit, it's still exciting. It's not laid back. It's not very forward either. I don't want to use the word neutral, but it is kind of there, and I do find it to be a very good sound because it does have the detail retrieval that I do like out of. I've been quite spoiled in this regard, but even then, I find this to be very well. Some people will buy like a phone, and then they buy like a digital audio player thinking it's going to be a huge upgrade, but they don't choose right, or they just get something which isn't that much of an upgrade, and they'll say, well, my phone sounds about as good as this. There is no way. Like I have a Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. There is no way I would mistake how that sounds compared to how this sounds. This has a much more nuanced and very well balanced approach to how it sounds. like the detail retrieval, the staging, just the overall clarity. But I do believe that this is a significant upgrade from that. And along with the interface, which I find effortless because it's basically Android and I'm an Android user, and the fact that it runs video so well, and the fact that it has a very nice screen, I find this to be a very capable audio player. Like, I definitely do enjoy using this. But that one thing I can't shake is definitely the part about the impedance. Now, I'm not the most qualified person to talk about this, but everything that I've listened to on this has been the Sage, the Utopia, the Claire, and that sounded great. Everything I tried on this sounds great. But I can definitely understand why people might have some apprehension towards it because, like I said, Karawang said in his review that the Andromeda got quite a bit brighter, and that's not something if you spend $1,000 on an IEM and you like a certain sound that it gives off, you really don't want to have to pair it with something that can change that significantly. So that is something you'll have to consider when looking into this device. This does have a line-out jack, and it's not a fixed output, which I found quite strange. It's basically like the headphone jack. You have to pump the volume all the way to full when you plug in and you have it, the line-out basically. And it also has, through the same thing, you have to change it in the settings later on. It also has the switch to make it coaxial out. So you basically have the coaxial / line-out. You have the headphone jack, and then you have a smaller 2.5mm balanced headphone out, which I've been using quite a bit. And yeah, that's pretty much the only thing. You've got the volume on the left, the 2 buttons for volume, and on the right you have the power button, which lights up different colors depending on the bitrate of what you're listening to. Usually it'll be blue for regular standard CD quality, and then it can go up to green for, I think, 24-bit and higher, and then it'll go up to red for DSD, but I don't have any DSD files to try that, so I'm just assuming that's basically what I've heard. And then you have a play and stop button, play pause buttons rather, next track, previous track, yeah. So very capable player, very happy with it. I do believe that this is still very much the prototype device. Like, this is just a demo, because I did notice when I first got this, it had everything in Chinese. So I had to switch it over to English, and then I had to wait for another update for me to access the Google Play Store. And then once I did, everything was smooth sailing from then. I haven't had any problems with this being turned off randomly. Like I've had that with some other adapts that I've had in the past, where it turns off randomly or it overheats, even though this does get very warm when you're using it. I wouldn't say it's unusually warm, but it's definitely something that took me a little bit by surprise compared to the Own M1S, which doesn't get warm. Speaking of the Own M1S, I should really talk about the differences between the two, because like I said, that's my other reference. The Own M1S also has a Sabre implementation that I do enjoy, but compared to this, that one is definitely a bit peaky. It also has a bit more of a bass boost compared to the Hiby, and I do believe it's a very lively sound, but it does have a little bit of those the pins and needles kind of glare that you get with some Sabre based devices, and this is lacking in that, so I'm quite happy with the Hiby in that regard. The Own M1S also has, I believe, the worst interface I've ever seen on a digital audio player. Like, it is something straight out of the early 2000s. It is just, I mean, it's very fast, I can give it that. It's very fast to zip through all the files and get where you want to go, but at the same time, it's just, it's very lacking. That's all I'll say. Whereas this is basically just Android 6.0, so have at it. You can go through it, flip through things, slide away to your heart's content. And yeah, so basically in terms of sound, I do prefer the Hiby quite a bit more, but the Own M1S is a lot lighter. It's a lot more, it's more of a gym digital audio player, if you're the sort of person who wants to have a digital audio player at the gym. Whereas this one I would think is more like something you're sitting in, like a bus, or like your general standard daily use digital audio player, because this is quite heavy, as you can see in the measurement on the screen right now, and this isn't really something you want to go running with, or something you want to go to the gym with, which, good. Everything has its own purpose. So what do I think of it overall? I think it's a very capable device. It sounds very good to my ears, and with everything that I've tried it with, I do think people should have, rightfully so, some apprehension when pairing it with other devices because of its 10 ohm output impedance. But your mileage may vary, and it pains me to say that as a reviewer, but my own experience has been very positive. But also, I hope you do take my caution with some weight when looking into this in the future. And so that has been my review of the Hiby R6, and I will see you next time. Cheers.